Well, I know a lot of you already know these folks, but I do want to go ahead and introduce them. So immediately to my left is John Calloway, who is the Executive Director and President, correct?
Chief Toilet Cleaner.
Yes, at Mission Waco, now Mission Waco World. And, of course, our own Aaron Lange, who is the President of Cedar Ridge Elementary. Did I say presidents? You are the president. Yeah. That's right. I was earlier today, I was trying to come up with the word inauguration, and of course I said ordination. So it's just, that's the way my mind is working this morning. So we're going to have a conversation with these good folks again, so you can learn more about what they do. So y'all can go and flip those mics on if they're not already on. And we'll start with you, Aaron. How did you get into teaching? What's your background? How did this find you?
I think it finds teachers how it always finds teachers, from life. I was the little kid that was always playing teacher. And so it was always just written in the stars. I taught at Waco High for 5 years right out of graduation. Then I went to University High for 3, and I was an instructional specialist, which is like a teacher coach. And then I moved to Cedar Ridge after that and became assistant principal, and now this is my 3rd year as principal.
Okay, yeah. John, how did you land?
Well, I went to Truett Seminary,
Okay.
Graduated in 2011, moved to Austin, was a missions pastor at a church there for almost 8 years, and would come back and teach classes for Jimmy Dorrell at Baylor. And one day he said, hey, why don't you move back to Waco and take over for me? I said, no, I'm good, man. I've moved to the promised land of Austin, Texas, and put Waco in my rearview mirror. And he said, well, why don't you pray about it? I said, I really don't want to pray about it. And, 7 months later, we were moving to Waco for me to take over from Jimmy with Mission Waco. But God certainly orchestrated lots of different stories and paths that I was put on to get me here.
Yeah. All the great twists and turns.
They're amazing, and it's still a mystery sometimes.
Yeah. So I'll ask you, John, this next question, and then I'll throw it to Aaron as well. If you could just sort of give us a 30,000-foot view of Mission Waco. So what is the work that Mission Waco does in Waco? And sort of the second half of that, though, is what really gets you going? What excites you about it? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Great question. So high level, Mission Waco does 3 things. We empower and we equip and we engage. And we do those things through about 20 different programs, about 6 businesses. That includes lots of ministries around the world, Haiti, Mexico City, and India as well. But we do a lot of that through a lot of different kinds of programs like after-school programming. But then also you can have all the great programming in the world, but to see people lifted out of poverty, you have to see economic development in underserved and under-resourced communities. And so that's why we have businesses that create jobs and do those kinds of things. What wakes me up in the morning is certainly God's calling on my life and my 8-year-old usually screaming or at our bed staring at us. But what gets me to work and my love for what I do is certainly this God's calling on my life and then people. We're all about relationships at Mission Waco, and when you ask us how we define success, we talk about people. And we talk about our board members who came through our programming, or my staff that came through our programming, or the people in our neighborhoods and their stories of life change. So it's all about people, and that's at the core of our businesses and all of our programming that we do.
Yeah, fantastic. Aaron, I want to ask you the same question, but sort of it's interesting because I think people think that they know what happens at an elementary school. And so, the way the question even is phrased is, tell us about the work that Cedar Ridge does in Waco. So, this is a community organization. So I want you to speak to that a little bit, and then also sort of the same second half of the question, which is what gets you out of bed to do that work.
Right, so Cedar Ridge is a pre-K4, generally through 5th grade campus, but we do have 2 classrooms of students with really high specialized needs. We have some nonverbal students, some autistic students that are 3 years old through 5th grade. So those rooms are definitely interesting. There's always an adventure at Cedar Ridge. No day is ever the same, which is also part of what gets me up and going. As far as the work we do in the community, we really try and build up our kids and our families. Just last week, we held a community resource event where we had different community resources come in for the family. So if you need Shepherd's Heart, if you need to find jobs at Goodwill support, all those kind of things. to try and help out our community as well. A lot of times I joke that we are parents to the parents. We have families come in and say like, hey, what can I do? How can I do this? And so I try and build those strong relationships with parents as well. We serve about 440 students.
Okay.
So it's a good sized campus that we can know everybody, but also it's, pretty big. And I think that what gets me to work is really the kids. I've been there for 9 years now, and so I've known a lot of them from all the way pre-K through 5th grade. And my duty station in the morning is right by the front door, so I get at least 10 hugs every morning. More if I go into a line as they're leaving, because then once you hug one, they all want to hug you. But it's really the kids and seeing the joy and seeing the growth that they make being at school.
And I've had the distinct privilege of going for career day the last few years, and it is so much fun. I mean, it's just a blast. Most of the questions are about demons, as you would expect, and exorcisms, and just all the fun stuff, Yeah, but it is so much fun. Wow. John, what are some of the immediate needs that Mission Waco serves for families in Waco? What sort of things are provided on a pretty regular basis, just within the course of a normal week?
Sure. I mean, we have about 160 kids in our after-school programming Monday through Thursday, and that's all the way from kindergarten to seniors in high school. And so that's the main way we serve families on a programmatic basis. But then also our grocery store, which St. Albans has been involved in. And we're always looking for volunteers to help stock shelves. We try to keep our overhead as low as possible. And so I like to say that we're board protected, staff led, but people driven. And so we really need folks like you to come and give of your time and your talent to really, really help drive the organization forward. But we also do a lot of things. We're mostly known in the community for what we do for those who are unhoused on the streets. That is what we do, but not all that we do. And so what we do for the unhoused is we have an emergency 56-bed shelter that's open every day of the year. And then times like this, we go to 24/7 because it's just too cold. We have a cold weather policy. And we found that over time, we've seen that affordable housing has really been one of the critical issues that's not just facing our unhoused population, but all of us, to be perfectly honest. And so our newest initiative this year that's been in the works for about 3 years is a tiny home village called Creekside Community Village. And we broke ground in October, and we hope to have those affordable units put up by the end of this year.
May I I just want to ask those of you who are assembled here, how many of y'all had heard that this is happening? Okay, good. So I just wanted to make sure the word is getting out, because it is a really, really exciting initiative. And before this, I don't know if you had heard of the one in Austin that this is sort of based on, which is called, remind me again.
Community First.
Community First. Anybody heard of that one? Okay, good. Yeah, the one in Austin. Wonderful, wonderful. Very exciting. Aaron, sort of the same thing, and you already spoke to this a bit, but outside of sort of the immediate classroom education, what are some needs that are being served to your community? And if folks don't know, by the way, could you just talk about the neighborhood and sort of where it is that you're located within Waco?
Yes, so we are hidden a little bit within a neighborhood. So if you're driving down 19th Street and you see the school sign, that's us. We're tucked right back across from that H-E-B and Church's Chicken. We're over near MCC. It is a changing area, but even as such, we are still serve about 96% of our population qualifies for free and reduced lunch. So we do still have a lot of the same struggles. We've contacted Mission Waco several times to have that partnership to provide support. We also try and provide a lot of social emotional learning. We have budgeted a social emotional learning specialist on our campus, and she literally just does lessons and works with kids that are struggling in the regular classroom. If you don't feel safe and if you have emotions that you can't control, then you're not going to learn how to do your math problems. You're not going to be able to focus on the reading. So we've put a lot of emphasis on that this year too, as far as really trying to help our kids with big emotions and how to handle those. And just working with them like that.
Adults often need quite a bit of help with that as well. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's most of our adults.
That's right. Yeah. When you think about the biggest challenges, right? Sort of what are some of the top 2 or 3 biggest challenges that you're facing right now with your organizations, John?
Yeah, great question. I think ask any nonprofit, money's always the top, right? Because you always need money and you never have enough. And I'm looking at Tim Packer over there. He knows what I'm talking about. I think that we've got 2 projects that are really a focal point for us, not just this year, but for the next 3 to 5 years. And the Tiny Home Village is certainly one. It's a significant effort. The phase 1 is around almost up to $20 million in order to pull that off. And so we've raised about 14. And so we're well on our way, but I'll be standing in the back and I will take checks. Andrew's going to lock the doors until we raise the rest of that. And so but a part of that is just significant prayer for the people who are pulling that off, the volunteers we have raising the money, the staff that I have leading the project, and ultimately the people that will be served by it. They are a part of the process as far as designing homes and designing policies that we're going to need to operate out there. So a lot of wisdom, pray for wisdom in that. There's a lot of work being done this year. The second is a grant that started this month. It's called the EPA Community Changes Grant. It's almost $20 million, and it involves the City of Waco, Baylor University, the Scrap Collective, which is Family of Faith Worship Center, those other partners, and then a number of programs at Mission Waco. And it's just a tremendous effort and collaborative effort across the city to put in solar projects. There'll be 3 different resiliency centers across the city, and those are buildings and centers that have battery solar and backup battery storage, so they can operate in times like when we had 2021 and everybody lost power. There will be 3 of those across the city that can operate independently of losing power. So it's a climate resiliency action, climate-based change grant, which is just a lot of words that don't make sense to even me. But it's a lot of different projects that help a lot of different people across the city with some really, really good partners. The farm, World Hunger Relief Farm is a part of that grant as well. And so it's a pretty significant project. So just those 2 big focal points for Mission Waco, those are just challenges. And that comes with a lot of change and a lot of structure that needs to come alongside. At the end of the day, we're not a huge nonprofit. And so taking on 2 multi-million-dollar projects, it kind of requires and forces you to kind of catch the organization up with the change, and that's staffing and its policies and all those things that need spreadsheets and things that I don't like to do, but I have to do it. And so that's just a challenge when you have that kind of change and you grow that quickly. You just want to do so following after God's calling on our life as an organization and making sure you're staying mission-centric and not kind of going left or right and getting away from what God is really calling you to do. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question, but
absolutely.
Those are 2 of the bigger challenges for our organization this year.
Thank you. Aaron, significant challenges facing Cedar Ridge and your work there?
So I think one obvious challenge kind of similarly is funding. What a lot of people don't realize is that in Texas, our funding is based off attendance, not based off how many kids are enrolled at our building. So when kids aren't coming to school, we are actually losing money.
Wow.
And we really try to reach out. We try and build like a community so they feel part of it, so they come to school. But with that, I know it's been all over. Waco is in a deficit, and so we lost some positions. We lost some staffing that have played vital roles. So, I mean, volunteering kind of similarly, giving of time and energy coming in to help out in a classroom while a teacher's teaching. If you could, circulate and help out in different centers, those kind of things would be really helpful. And we also just need the prayers and support that way. I tell our staff every year that St. Albans is praying for us every week by name. And the peace that brings our staff is remarkable. Every year before school starts, we do a big prayer. And it means a lot to our staff that we have the partnership here and that we have prayer. We have a lot of students and families that have crisis situations, and so having those resources and being able to call on the church is also very helpful.
And so you already sort of anticipated the next question, which is how are we already involved, right? So those are some ways. What are other ways that St. Albans is already involved at Cedar Ridge?
So every fall, the backpack and school supply drive
Yeah.
is remarkable. We just ran out of backpacks like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Because I think there were about 120, I think Jeff counted them, 120, 125 clear backpacks. And that's a little thing, but it's amazing to the kiddos. And the kids that come into our community that are not from schools that require that will ask us every day, do you have a clear backpack for me? Do you have that? And so it's a little thing that makes a huge impact on us. You mentioned Career Day. We're always looking for speakers to do Career Day. And I think it was almost exclusively St. Albans members last year.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you've done Career Day.
Dan.
Yes, I know Dan has been there. Anybody else? Okay. Do you want to share your experience at Career Day?
I got asked about dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. Okay. History. Yeah.
No, a lot about dinosaurs. No, it's by far the most popular question.
That's great. Yeah. It was so much fun.
It is. And then also just volunteering in the class. We have a lot of volunteers at our events, which help make it a success. Thanksgiving lunch, which we changed to dinner this year, we had at least 10 people, I think, from St. Albans there. We have just all throughout the year, a lot came for our Christmas shop, which was the second time we've ever done that.
Okay.
And so that was vital. We can't run it without people coming in there.
Yeah. I was privileged enough to be able to help deliver those backpacks and school supplies to Cedar Ridge at the beginning of the school year. And the kids weren't even there yet, but just to see how excited the staff was. I mean, it was overwhelming and joyous. Yeah. John, what does our partnership with St. Albans already look like?
I mean, there's been a partnership long before I got here.
Yeah.
I came here about 8 years ago to take over from Jimmy. And partnership with St. Albans is interesting because you have the corporate partnership, like the toy store. Or I think that Dr. Rhonda had done it's like a vouchers that you can use
Yes,
at our
that's
grocery
right.
store.
Yes.
And so you have this corporate sponsorship. You have we get some proceeds from the big garage sale that goes to some nonprofits. And so there's this corporate public kind of partnership, which is encouraging. But then I look around the room and I see people that I know that are involved, not really as a part of St. Albans, the church, but just as individuals. Like I think of Bob and Florence, who are at the World Cup Cafe at least 3 times a week. And I think of a lot of members who volunteer or they're donors. And I think that speaks to the culture of St. Albans. Because on one hand, it's expected that a big church would partner with the schools that's in their neighborhood or the nonprofits that are in our community. And they do that at a corporate level, but to really see individuals who come alongside those organizations, that really speaks to the culture and what the staff has pushed, what leadership and volunteers have pushed, because it's not just about what the church does on a Sunday and putting toys in a trailer that goes to kids, but it's individuals who are teaching their kids about poverty and teaching their kids about how, as Christians, that essential core element of discipleship is helping those who are under-resourced. And you can see that come out and into play. One of the ways that I think a lot of people could really, really impact Mission Waco is not through picking up a paintbrush or a shovel or writing some huge check, even though, side note, I will take the huge check. But it's coming to eat at the World Cup Cafe. You've got to eat breakfast and lunch somewhere. You're going to have that business meeting at a restaurant somewhere. Please, please, please come to World Cup Cafe. When we see economic development happen, that is a catalyst for other businesses to pop up in the neighborhood. And when you eat, that offsets our loss. That restaurant does not make money. One day, I would love for it to make money, but it supports about 12 to 15 staff. Right now, about 9 of those staff are women who have come out of addiction and are staying in a variety of homes around the neighborhood that help support those women. But they come and they get the support at Mission Waco in a place, in a restaurant that normally would not be supporting women in that way, allowing the grace to grow and be a good employee, but also learn what it means to be a Christian and run a business. And so just really helping them, and also just provides jobs and provides insurance and those kinds of things that are really maybe difficult for them because their job history isn't that great, and maybe they wouldn't get the same opportunity in another place. And if they did, they're making $3.25 an hour or whatever it is when you're waiting tables. And so when you come and you eat, you're not just having a really good meal, because it's really good food, but you're supporting those women, and that's a significant breakfast. That's a significant lunch. And so that's another way to get involved, and you're not just having to take up a week and go on a mission trip somewhere, but you're just living life, and God's using the life that you're living to support other people.
That's great, really.
Sorry, I had to make that plug.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah. So, and again, we've already sort of spoken to this. Any sort of last things you want to say in terms of letting St. Albans members know how they can be involved in various things that you all are doing? Erin?
I think for me, it's just presence and prayers. And like presence in the sense of coming to the school, visiting, helping out, not just for events, but like I said, in the classroom, if you feel able, and if it's like kind of nerve-wracking, that's okay. We can tell you what to do. But it's just that being there, and then consistent prayer are two really big things for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Presence and prayer. I'm going to steal that. That was a good one. I would echo that. Pray with your kids about how to get involved and why serving in our community matters, and why it's a part of the Christian walk.
Right.
Because I think that discipleship of our kiddos is huge. And they're going to grow up one day, and they're going to be teaching their kids, hopefully, the same things. But then presence is a huge part, whether it's shopping at our grocery store, eating at the World Cup Cafe, coming to a theater production at the Jubilee Theater. We're doing 5 or 6 different productions this year, mostly around community and kiddos. But being present, and that's in an after-school program, which is probably hard for most of us working adults. But we also have other kinds of service, kinds of events that you can do and be a part of. But if it's as simple as just eating a breakfast taco, or getting the biscuits and gravy, or eating the hamburger.
You're making me really hungry right
I know,
now.
so I'm trying
Yeah.
to, I wish I had pictures and I could
It's
show
working,
you.
it's
Exactly.
working. Yeah.
But come and have a good meal and enjoy fellowship with a friend or a family member.
Yeah. I love the education piece that you're talking about. You know, the gospel reading this morning is about Jesus' first miracle at Cana and turning the water into wine. And I pointed out in my sermon that like what he doesn't do is say, man, these people should have planned better. They should have taken on a second job so that they could have provided, they should have accepted personal responsibility and just worked really hard. They were in need. And Jesus doesn't lecture them. And in fact, they don't even know who did this thing for them. He just does it, Well, his mother has to remind him that he needs to do it. But he just does it sort of quietly and under the table. And then, this family is saved from embarrassment and shame, because this is what he does, right? And so he does that through your ministries as well, which is a glorious thing. I'm sure y'all have some questions maybe that you want to ask, either John or Aaron. So I would like to open it up if anyone has questions. Don Dyer? Great.
Lots of great questions. There's more information here, which I've put them in the back.
Yes, right back there by Robert.
Because probably every answer I give, you're going to have more questions, and I understand that. When people think about homelessness and housing, nothing good comes to mind. Our desire is that when you drive onto this property, when it's built out, your first thought is, I would live here. That kitchen is nicer than my kitchen. That bathroom is much nicer than my bathroom. That house looks way cooler than my house. The fellowship and the community that I see, that looks very different than my neighborhood. And so when it's fully built out, we'll have 346 units. It's 68 acres off of University Parks Drive, backs up to the Brazos River. And the city of Waco helped us purchase that property. They gave us $1 million. And so through the generosity of a lot of different donors and other people that have really helped this project come to fruition, we'll have this month, by the end of this month, we'll start digging and putting pipes in the ground. assuming the city of Waco, I'm looking for any officials that might be in here, gives me my permit that I need to actually attach to the city utilities and the water line. But then we'll have slabs that will go in early summer, because pipes and covering all those up is going to take 1 to 2 months, and then we'll do roads, sidewalks. That'll take 1 to 2 months, and then we'll put slabs down in the summer, and then hopefully homes up early fall, and people moving in by the end of December. So it is permanent for those who want it. It is transitional for those who need it. It is not a transitional program. But for many of us, I mean, every home we've lived in is transitional if we want it to be. I can sell it. I mean, how many of us bought a starter home when we first got married?
Yeah.
And then you had 1,000 kids and you needed a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom. And then you were empty nesters, and so you went back down. And so the idea is that, everybody wants to come in and, maybe be there permanently. But for some who get a really good paying job, and want to buy a home, then we'll have a program, partner with one of our home builder nonprofits in town, that puts them on a path of home ownership. So it's transitional for those individuals. But for those that likely are chronically homeless, who have 2 disabilities, they fit that stereotypical HUD definition, the likelihood of them being homeowners is very slim. The likelihood of them moving off and being able to afford an apartment complex around here is also slim. And so depending on the unit that they choose, right, that determines the affordability. When I was doing surveys about 2 years ago, when this began to when we had some designs of homes and we were talking about programmatic aspects of the village, we went to My Brother's Keeper, our shelter, and had a number of surveys done and conversations. And the number, after seeing the homes, what they would look like, because we have pictures from our partner in Austin, and talking about what would be available, the biggest positive feedback, which I was a little surprised by, was, I'm just happy I get to choose. Because no one's being forced to live into this neighborhood. They get to come out, and they get to choose which home they want to live in. And they get to work with whatever church partner. We're trying to match churches with different homes who's helping build and pay for those. And you might have a Sunday school class that says, we're going to meet with you and help you pick out the curtains and help you pick out the art on the wall, and we're going to help pay for that. And so through those kinds of partnerships, that connection becomes a part of the support system that allows people to come get off the street and stay off the street. One thing to add is it's not entirely folks who were formerly unhoused. It's about 20 to 30% mixture of those who are more middle class, like my sister and brother-in-law and their 4 children have lived in a 400 square foot tiny home in Austin at Community First for almost 10 years. Wow. So it's not just folks who are off the streets, but it's people who see this as a calling to do life with others, in community with one another, to help lift people and keep people off the streets.
I remember a couple of years ago when you came and spoke to us, you talked about the census that Mission Waco does, right? It's a census of those who are...
Oh, the point-in-time count.
Yeah. And you mentioned the number 300.
Yeah, well, we had, back in 2005, a lot of people don't know this, when Waco started doing the point-in-time count, which is a federal count that we have to do for chronically homeless. We had between 600 and 650. And then back in probably last year or 2 or 3 years ago, for about 5 or 6 years, it's hovered around 200. So we've seen a fairly significant decrease. Yeah. Now, when it comes to youth homelessness, that's a little bit different and a different story. It's harder to count youth homelessness as well. So Tim's going to have accurate numbers for that. But in 2023, that shot up 25%, which is fascinating, and we're trying to figure out why. The number one reason is affordable housing. Yeah. You just getting a deposit on an apartment and then making 3 times the rent for income is just, it's impossible. And so we have a cyclical, the same people that come to our shelter leave and may get something and then they lose their job because the bus didn't get there on time and they got fired from the restaurant job. So it's just then they're back at the shelter.
You can't do one step without having the other step already done, but you can't do that step until this step is done.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions for John or Aaron? Yeah, Linda.
No, ma'am. You would only have to do a background check, which is on the Waco ISD website under volunteer. I think it's on top right corner. You can click volunteer. That would be it.
I'm going to repeat your question so the live stream folks can hear it as well. It's sort of what happens in May at the end of the school year when kids who are being served and are having their needs met, then the summer hits. And yeah.
So I think one of the biggest needs is food insecurity. And Waco filled out a grant a couple years ago, and so every student in Waco, regardless of age or anything, gets free breakfast and lunch, no matter what, no questions asked, which is remarkable. It's wonderful. Our kiddos will come for their food. And so we continue being a serving site throughout the summer. Our child nutrition service sets it up. We have summer school. Hopefully we won't have construction this year, so we'll have it on our campus. And we feed kids, but it's open to the community, so anyone can come in. We set up some different hours, but we are a serving site all throughout the summer. And then we staff it with ourselves. I'm there all summer. Our SEL specialist comes in some, and so we just kind of check in with them, and we try and maintain a presence on Facebook, which sounds really weird, but a lot of our parents will contact us on Facebook because they know, like, I run the page along with our assistant principal. And so they'll comment and they'll send us a message, hey, this is happening in our life. Can you just be aware of it? Or those kinds of things. And so we'll try and reach out and fill those needs as they come during the summer.
Great. Thank you. Other questions? Yes. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so same question about how do you volunteer. So if you go to our website, Mission Waco /get involved, we have a volunteer section there. We have an online platform that manages all of it. So you create an account, and then you can see all of the available opportunities to serve. And the platform connects you with the right people. Usually starts after you sign up with an account with an orientation. We do a volunteer orientation, because if you just look at a list of things to do, it's a little overwhelming because there's a lot of things that you could sign up for, but you also don't have any context around why we do that, how we do that, how long we've been doing that. And so we do an orientation that is an hour long, and you ask all those questions. We like to do it in person, but we've got Zoom and Teams as well. But it starts with the website, and it starts with the get involved and volunteers. And then also just you can get on the website and read about all the things we do, and there might be something that really piques your interest, or you might find something that you're really passionate about. Because we want to plug people into what a ministry that God's put on their heart. And we're looking for volunteers that maybe have an hour a month or an hour, once a year. So it's everything in between that we need volunteers for. But if you go to our website, go to the volunteers page, it's a pretty easy online platform to create an account with. And if you have any problems with that, you just call the main office. Bailey Rouse, who's my director of volunteers, she can walk you through that process and do a lot of those things for you. Wonderful.
Thank you. We're just about out of time. We have time for maybe one more question. Anybody? So the short question that Tim asked has to do with basically, like you said, a question you get asked. I'm sure a question you get asked a lot, which is, you're at the corner of Franklin and New Road. What is the best response, the most holistic response, the response that's going to truly and actually help someone?
So not a short question, but I will try to give somewhat of a medium-length answer.
Yeah.
The short answer is that we always want to see Jesus in them. And so how do you go about doing that? For me, I carry around things in my car. Like, I always have a bottle of waters that I carry. So I always have something. Personally, and this is where I can't answer for you, I can only tell you what I do, and I tell volunteers and staff to do, which is to not give money. But only if you are giving money to a nonprofit or a ministry that is helping. With integrity, I can say no, because I'm saying, hey, actually, I really do help. Let me tell you how. Have you heard of My Brother's Keeper? Have you heard of the Meyer Center? And I know you're asking me for money for food. Did you know that right now you could go get lunch at Salvation Army for free? Or you could go stay at the shelter and get breakfast, hot breakfast for free. So there's lots of resources out there. And I think with integrity, if we are helping fund those ministries or those service providers, then I think with integrity, when they ask you for something, you can say, actually, I do give, it's just not like this. When people come to the World Cup Cafe and they want a free meal, we say, one, we want to see Jesus in them, so what's your name? Where are you from? Where are you staying? But then, hey, I'm not going to say no to helping. We just don't help here at the World Cup. Let me tell you about the hours, and let me see if we can get you a ride over to the Meyer Center. So I say yes, just not with a cash exchange. I say yes, and I do this, like me personally, and not just because I'm an executive director of this organization, but like I give money specifically to our Meyer Center and our shelter and our benevolence ministry, where there's bus passes and there's meals and clothing and all those kinds of things. So when they ask me for those things, I can say, hey, have you heard of this? And that's what I give money to. A lot of the folks that you're going to see on street corners, they're not necessarily McLennan County. Most of them are not McLennan County unhoused. They're folks from out of town. I-35 is a main corridor between Dallas and Austin and Houston a little bit. And so you have a lot of people that are just stopping in for a couple days. Last week I was talking to a guy in front of CVS over across from Baylor, and he was staying out on the streets. I was telling him about MBK, and I said, hey, I can give you a ride. And he said no, but thank you, and a bottle of water in the CVS. And he was very grateful. And you don't always get that interaction. I've often been cussed at for not giving some money, and that's okay. But that's my choice because I give through Mission Waco. And I think with integrity I can sleep at night knowing that I do give and I do provide, and that's what Christ is calling me to, just not in the manner that we typically do, because that's the easy thing to do. Here's $5, and then you don't have to talk to him again, and you feel better about yourself. But are you really helping? Or potentially, could you be hurting? And I think that's the fundamental question. We make our staff and a lot of our volunteers read When Helping Hurts, which is an empowerment type book that talks about, instead of providing handouts, we provide hand-ups. People with the problem have to be a part of the solution. And so providing handouts rarely long-term have impact in a positive way, at least that you can measure. And so we want to do something in an empowering way. And that's fundamentally based on a relationship with an individual, which you can't have when you're just driving by, right? But you can help in small ways. And if that's a bottle of water or a candy bar or something like that, that's a great idea as well.
Thank you.
Good question.
Do you want your longer question as well? Did you save it? Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, because if that was short, whew.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much for being with us today, and we're really grateful, and continue to let us know how we can partner and support you.
I'm going to be in the back. I've got some
Great.
more of these. Would
Okay.
love to hand those out, and I'll take long questions.
Okay, good deal. Thank y'all.